Hello, I'm Somi Arian. I'm the founder of Fintech, a women-led inclusive platform where visionary individuals come to gain live access to global leaders, learn about cutting-edge topics in macroeconomics and Web3, and stay ahead of the curve in the fast-paced world of business and technology. My guest on today's podcast is Katharine Wooller, Managing Director of Dacxi, a leading crypto wealth company focused on helping people build long-term wealth with this asset class. Katharine is in a unique position as a woman and as an industry leader, raising the awareness of the general public about the opportunities in crypto as a meaningful asset class. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I'm sure you will too. One of the things that just came to my mind as we were preparing for this conversation was that when we are talking about women, we are always women in crypto. We are always minimizing their role. We're minimizing our investment in getting more women into crypto, these projects, and talking about, for example, the way that you're thinking about your outreach, your marketing. My point is that if we continue to minimize women's role, then it's harder to get more women in, right? So tell me a little bit about you as a woman leading a crypto based company, and what has been your observation of the way that what are companies trying to do to bring more women in?
Sure.
What are they doing to actually get more women involved? Because this is a huge portion of the market. Women are half of the population, and they are not in the crypto market. Like majority of them are not. So it would make sense to actually invest in bringing more women into it, and almost nobody is doing it.
Yeah, so look, like you, I find a lot of the dialogue around women in financial services quite patronizing. So look, I've been working in some of the world's biggest banks and asset managers. And if I had £1 for every time someone assumed I was, there to make the coffee or carry the coats, I'd be a very wealthy woman indeed. So, I came from conversations where I was sitting down with, Deutsche Bank, Citi and UBS, and you're kind of struggling to justify your existence. And particularly when you look at the dialogue around, women investing, as you say, we're half the population, and nothing offends me more than it's really patronizing, or there's a picture of a handbag or something pink, or there's a picture of a woman with kids. Well, not everyone's got kids, or it's always like an intergenerational grandma, mum, kids. Well, I've got loads of female friends that haven't got kids. I've got loads of female friends that have lost their mums, or their mums are super glamorous. They don't identify with kind of that haggard old woman in the picture. So going from a woman in banking to a woman in fintech made me unusual. To be a woman in crypto is like one stage removed. Like there's hardly any of us, like you and me and a handful of others basically. And there are some really interesting conversations going around about diversity in recruitment. So at Dacxi, actually about half of our headcount is female. And when someone says to you, oh, my headcount is really impressive, I've got loads of women in the business, the next question you should ask is, yeah, but where? Because they're nearly always in the junior roles, or they're in the more creative roles, and that's not good enough. So we've got a female MD, we've got a female head of brand, we've got a female head of learning, we've got a female head of ops in the UK. So I want to see women in those important roles, okay? And you need to recruit in a certain way. You need to make sure that your jobs are flexible. You need to make sure you're recruiting the right person with the right skill set. You need to make sure you've got, a good, strong cultural fit. So it's one of the things that inspired me, and I love the work that you're doing with Fintech. But one of the reasons why I was inspired to put together Women Who Crypto, it wasn't women in crypto like you and I. It was anyone who was female who had an interest in crypto. And actually, the guys are invited too. We don't throw you out or anything. So we're just a Facebook group. We have lots of webinars. They're all free. They're just big get-togethers. And I believe that we are the largest online group of women interested in crypto, I believe. I'm yet to be corrected on that. And actually, the stuff we talk about is really interesting. So it's anyone who has an interest in crypto. And a lot of the dialogue around investing generally is not relatable. It's someone that's got a PhD in economics from Harvard. It's someone whose, parents gave them, $1 million to invest. And that's just not relatable. So we need more people out there that are genuine role models. We need some diversity in, ethnicity. We need some diversity in age. We need some diversity in social background. So our meetups are women from all walks of life. They've got kids, they haven't got kids, they're married, they're single, they're divorced. There's a huge variety of experience there, because I want people to say, you know what, that chick, she had 3 generations of owning a pet shop in her family and she got into crypto. Well, that girl over there, she had a chain of hairdressers and she thought that was actually really backbreaking hard work, and now she's in crypto, and what's it done for her life? And the stuff we talk about, isn't just crypto, it isn't just finance, it's not economics, it's not where the market's going. It's how do you fit this into your daily life? Is it a side hustle? Is it your main income? Are you working in crypto? Is this just a passing interest? What are you doing about your kids or your partner or your parents or dating? Honestly, the stuff that we discuss is just a massive variety. So I think for me personally, the crypto industry needs to do more to be accessible to women. It's too jargony, it's too brotastic, it needs to be more welcoming, generally. The whole point of crypto is that it doesn't discriminate, it's fairer, it's more democratic. Bitcoin doesn't care if you're male, female, young, old, green, purple, blue, it just doesn't care. So that message needs to get out there from the businesses that are in the crypto space. We need to be making sure those D&I policies are strong. I've been to interviews where it's a 99% male workforce. And one of the things I always say is I worked in a building once where there's about 300 people. I think I was one of only 2 girls. I occasionally saw another girl in the corridor, and we had unisex toilets. That was revolting after 10:30, I can assure you. So let's make it more welcoming from the businesses. We can lead from the top. And more importantly, that needs to filter down to when we're interfacing with our users. We need to make sure we've got a proposition that makes sense, because as you say, we're 50% of the workforce, we have wealth, and we don't want to be patronized.
Amazing. So that's interesting, because even though, for example, you're female MD of a crypto based company, but you're still aware of the fact that women, or like investing in marketing to women, has to be like a smaller part of your your budget. Who makes that decision? Is that a decision that comes from, for example, you, or is it from the owners? Why are we not investing more in, like, to me it doesn't make any sense, because I'm like, there is this huge population of women who have an interest, but they're afraid of going into it. And it's like the absolute sweet spot for a company like yours, because a lot of women are afraid of going into more riskier, types of investment. You focus more on the pedigree projects, like, the Bitcoin, and, you can tell me what other things that you invest in. So wouldn't it make sense to actually focus more on bringing in more women? Or is it that, focusing on the larger population, it generates a faster return? Is that how we see it?
So look, I set up Women Who Crypto 2 years ago. So look, as an industry, we're 4 to 5 years old. So we're a fairly new industry. We're just finding our feet, I think it's fair to say. A lot of the early marketing for crypto was very jargony, very masculine, very macho. If you didn't know, you weren't welcome. It was quite inaccessible and off-putting. I think that's a lot of sort of the feedback that we get. So 2 years ago, I was inspired to set up Women Who Crypto. I've won awards for being a woman in fintech, a woman, I put out a lot of content along those lines. So that tends to come to me. So I was inspired to set it up. I had the backing of our founder, who's based in New Zealand. My head of brand, who's also based in New Zealand, is female, and has been a great support in that. So I think it was probably my idea to start with. I think I had backing from the get-go, which was fantastic. And look, it makes sense to me. We don't need the information in a different format. Crypto as a whole was not making itself accessible. So at Dacxi, we're a very education-led business. So we want to be, I think we probably are the leader in getting people from, I'm intrigued in crypto, to, I want to get involved in that. And look, all the work that you're doing with FemPeak, you're hugely education-led. The fact that you have enough content to put on webinars pretty much daily is phenomenal. And I dare say that probably wasn't the case 2 or 3 years ago. The industry just didn't have enough, going on. Yeah. So like you, we put out a lot of educational resources. They're free. We have ebooks. We have this learning management platform just to encourage people to find out. Because what we're finding is, if you start Googling crypto, you disappear down a black hole pretty quickly. For every one question you answer, you come up with another 10. So having that guided learning is really important. There's a lot of evidence that women actually are better investors. There's a huge body of research there that says if you compare the decisions that women make to the decisions that men make, we work better in teams, we digest a broad variety of information more easily, we make better balanced decisions. So actually women generally are better investors. And I'm sure there's of course exceptions to that rule, but actually we just started from the point of view, we need education, we need it to be accessible. And actually the feedback we're getting from our female users, who are a substantial proportion of our user base, were saying, actually, we like a community-led feel. We love these meetups. They're once a quarter, we're not doing them hugely often. But as I say, the variety of topics that we cover, the variety of speakers that we have, just literally swapping their stories. This is how I got into it. This is what I did. And actually, you mentioned that we are very much focused on sort of the blue chip crypto. So obviously we're an exchange, there's plenty of those around. A lot of the exchanges have got huge lists of coins. As we record this podcast in January 2022, if you wake up and decide that you want to buy crypto, you've got nearly 17,000 cryptos to choose from, right? And that's before you even look at NFTs or you decide to get into mining. So look, I want to buy crypto. Does anyone realistically have the time to look at 17,000 coins? Some of these exchanges that have hundreds of coins, hundreds of pairs, it's a lot to get through. So we're not a trading exchange. If you want to day trade, we're not the exchange for you. All of our users are long-term holders. And of course, crypto being the best performing asset on the planet a couple of years in a row hasn't harmed. We have an £100 entry level. So lots of people just kind of put a toe in the water, get themselves comfortable before they purchase significantly more. So we're focused on a very short list, which is Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum. We do a bit of Bitcoin Cash, Stellar, Polkadot, and Chainlink, and we're launching a handful of others. So we are not looking at meme coins. We're not into esoteric coins. We have people that want to hold for long term for wealth creation. Actually, it's interesting. No one's really sitting in that wealth space. A lot of the chat around crypto it's always a picture of a rocket. It's always the moonshot. It's always kind of cartoony and quite young and quite flippant. And actually, there's a lot of evidence that retail investors are looking to put a really small proportion of their wealth into crypto. There's a lot of credible wealth commentators that are now saying, actually, do diversify, do put 1% of your holdings into crypto. And look, that is a substantial global market. And they're not buying the meme coins, they're buying the blue chip. So we're in that wealth space. We're not about day trading. We find that lots of our users don't have the time or the inclination or the knowledge to day trade, and they're after long-term wealth. And actually, I think lots of those routes to market that are coming out in crypto, particularly for me in the UK, and we now have people that are purchasing crypto using their ISA. So look, there's loads of good tax reasons why you would use an ISA, but look, that is a substantial, fairly old-fashioned, traditional financial structure. So we have people using their ISAs and pensions because they want the diversification, but they want it in a format and a language that they understand, and that's a marketplace. We're very excited about, and we're doing well from.
That's amazing. So is investing using your ISA, is it similar to IRA in the US?
Yes, they've often built up, substantial holdings within that structure. And for tax reasons, they're not looking to liquidate them. They just want to be able to take advantage of that. And look, for people that are already purchasing traditional retail financial investments, and look, anyone in crypto that says, we're anarchic, we're two fingers up at the bank, we're making sure the government can't touch my money. Well, that's great. But at some point, you need to either get from your traditional old-fashioned fiat into crypto or back again. Because right now, you will be challenged to buy a house or pay for your grocery bill with Bitcoin. There are places that do it, but they're like, 1 in a billion. So my view, and I talk about this quite a lot when I talk about financial infrastructure, is that crypto needs to integrate itself with what is currently there. It needs to be part of the ecosystem. And anyone that says otherwise is both deluded and wrong, right? They're immature and wrong, because it might be great that you bought, your Bitcoin for 100 quid and it's now worth 30,000 quid. That's fantastic. But at some point you need to offboard. So if you're using an exchange that doesn't have KYC and AML and doesn't have any regulation, that's not going to help you at all. So for us, when we are embracing and welcoming those traditional financial structures, that is a key part of that story, and making sure that, they're not butting up against each other, they're integrating really well. And that, for a crypto industry as a whole, will give you the widespread adoption that will get your Bitcoin to $100,000. So if you don't see that as a bigger picture, you are cutting your nose off to spite your face, in my opinion. And that's also the story, I think, about regulation. I think there has been, at best, a mutual distrust between regulators and crypto, and to see regulators in the world saying, actually, you know what? This industry is worth trillions of dollars now. We need to take this seriously. It's not niche. It's not a small number of people in their parents' basements, sitting there mining Bitcoin. This is a substantial industry. Most of the world's biggest banks, asset managers, hedge funds are now purchasing crypto. So we need to make sure there's a robust regulatory environment, or those two worlds just can't interact. And, my opinion as an exchange is not do the bare minimum, scrape through by the seat of your pants. Some of these big exchanges that say we don't need regulating because we're decentralized. That actually isn't the answer, because with that attitude, you just can't get the interaction.
Very interesting. So talking about regulations, where do you see this going? And we are in the UK, which is quite refreshing, because I speak to so many Americans and they don't see the kind of conversation that's going on here. The whole conversation around crypto regulations is based on what is happening in the US and what Jerome Powell is saying, and like what Gary Gensler is saying. So now, what's happening in the UK? Is UK taking a back seat, or is it leading the conversation in any way? What's the role of the UK in the crypto regulation?
I am on my third blockchain business. I have personally been purchasing crypto for about 4 years now. 18 months ago, 2 years ago, myself and my colleagues, if we saw crypto being talked about in the mainstream press, we would be WhatsApp, oh my goodness, look, Bitcoin's been mentioned on, BBC or CNN or whatever. We now don't bother because it would be a full-time job to do that, right? So personally, I've been interviewed as subject matter expert for BBC World News. I write for a lot of the mainstream British press who are intrigued about crypto. There's a lot more sort of general dialogue about crypto. A reasonable proportion of the UK population owns crypto. So I think our regulator has kind of finally woken up and smelt the coffee. A couple of years ago, quite rightly, our regulator, the FCA, said, look, you need to make yourselves known to us. And we have what was called a temporary permissions list. So our regulator is definitely getting interested. There's a couple of things that are kind of bubbling in the background. So the week that we're recording this podcast, the regulator has now said, we will hold crypto businesses accountable for advertising rules. So we need to make sure that the advertising for crypto is fair and not misleading. We had a whole bunch of adverts on our tube, the trains, our capital's train system, which were deemed to be misleading. So we need retail investors to feel safe and protected. We need businesses to behave in a way which is credible. So look, some regulatory context for that, I think, is desirable. I come under a bit of flack when I say, yeah, come on, bring on the regulation. It's good for the businesses, it's good for the firms, it's good for retail investors. So there's a couple of things kind of bubbling for us. So better control of the advertising, which makes sense. There's a lot of chat around central bank digital currencies. I've commented quite a lot in that for the press. So the important thing about that is, look, the Bank of England is not going to wake up and say, you know what, we should use Bitcoin. We don't need British pounds, we'll use Bitcoin. That is big fat not going to happen. What is interesting is that the majority of major economies, world banks, are looking to digitize their currencies. It makes perfect sense. It's cheaper, it's cleaner, it's easier to control. Imagine a world where they can see every pound moving. I mean, that will be such a blow for illicit activity. When people say, oh, that crypto is the currency of crime, I just roll my eyes, because we've got a couple of millennia of cash doing the same, and no one is as down on cash for the same reason. So look, if me and Somi go out for a coffee, I pick up the bill, she owes me £3 for her Starbucks, a British bank will send me that £3 without any questions asked. If we do it through crypto, we have chain analysis. So there are many good reasons why using crypto technology for currency is a good thing, right? So if central banks can embrace intellectually the idea of crypto, that is a really good start. So it is my opinion, in the near future, most of the world's population, when they use currency, will be using crypto technology in the near future, probably without even knowing, right? So in the UK, we've kind of really held ourselves to this high standard. Yeah, we're definitely a fintech hub. Yeah, we're great at fintech. And we are losing that, right? And I put that in a press quite a lot recently. If we don't take crypto as part of the fintech ecosystem more seriously, we are losing out big time, okay? Because lots of people are making a lot of money out of crypto. There's lots of these businesses that are in hypergrowth, mine included. We 20x'd our business last year. We're hiring people. Those people are earning good money. We have platform users that are making really good gains out of crypto, and those gains are taxable. So you've seen quite a lot of chat from our taxation authority saying, hang on, crypto is most definitely taxable. We've got some very overt rules around what that is. We've got all over the world people saying, okay, well, hang on, we know people are making money out of crypto. We'll be writing to the exchanges to find out exactly who and where and how and why, right? So if you're not declaring your taxable earnings on crypto, you are doing yourself a massive misjustice. So I think we've got a few things: better advertising, better regulation of those firms, a central bank digital currency, and actually Parliament, which of course is our political body, is now looking at crypto as an industry more closely. And look, I think they need to. I think it's long overdue. I think it's good for the industry, and I think it's good for the users. I think there's nothing to be scared of. And I think that mutual mistrust, I think, in my opinion, has festered for too long.
Super interesting. Okay, so I think maybe the major difference between me and you is that I'm a bit more of an anarchist.
Fair enough.
You know? And I kind of like the idea of money and state being separate, similar to how we manage to separate religion and state. But it's better for humanity from the viewpoint of less corruption. Wherever you look at, you know, like I come from Iran originally, wherever you look at any country where the more control the state has over the money, the more corruption there is. You know, part of the reason why there's less corruption in the West is that there is this level of control thanks to representative democracy. And in places like Iran, Turkey, you know, like all these countries where they're having a lot of trouble right now, there is democracy, but it's not full democracy. It's not a real democracy. It's really actually, you know, it's really not democracy, right? And I think that you see a lot of corruption in those places. So my question is, do you see a world where I'm kind of guessing that your answer is probably no, because of the space that you are in, and you have already mentioned that you think it's a good thing to kind of bring in more regulation into the crypto space and vice versa. But my worry is that by doing so, we may be putting ourselves a step closer to you know, a similar kind of structure to China, and you know, we may be taking a step back from the level of democracy that we have reached so far. Do you not worry about if the government, you know, and the CBDCs, you know, coming into the space? Do you not worry about the future state of democracy?
Yeah, sure. So look, I think there, like you, I share a healthy enthusiasm for what crypto offers. I personally believe that crypto is fairer and more democratic for 100 different reasons. You know, I think that to hold our politicians to account because there is an alternative system is a good thing. And look, the UK politics this week has just been an absolute shit show. I won't go into too much information, but it has been a particularly traumatic week to watch. The conduct of our politicians over COVID has not been great. I think I will just park that one there without going in. That's a whole another 8-hour podcast to talk about that in its own right. So I think that there is some really good reasons to think that crypto is a preferable financial system because it is allegedly immune to interference from governments. I totally buy that. That as a statement intellectually makes perfect sense to me. And particularly what you've seen over the COVID period is the wanton printing of money in major economies, right? So, oh, what a surprise. This week in the UK, it's been announced that we have the worst inflation in 30 years, right? So just basic things, you know, it's freezing cold in the UK. It's -3 today where I am. Our heating bills are hideous, the food bills are hideous, and there's people in the UK that's going to cause serious problems for. So lots of people have purchased crypto, particularly those with a finite supply, particularly Bitcoin, as a hedge against future inflation. The fact that it's, you know, had such a riotous rise is kind of by the by. People have bought it intellectually to hedge against future inflation. That's perfect. So I think that immune to interference is great. I think a distributed ledger technology, it keeps everyone honest, right? That the blockchain is immutable. So I can never say, yeah, no, somebody didn't send me that $100 worth of Bitcoin. Well, you clearly did because it's on the blockchain. So, you know, that information is out there. So that all makes perfect sense to me. I think the bit that I focus on is that there has to be a point of interaction between crypto and the old stuff. There has to be that interaction. And that's the point I'm interested in actually, is how the two interact. Because look, you know, we're a relatively new industry. We've kind of been proving ourselves, we've been finding our feet. There have been scams, but equally there's scams and, you know, in traditional financial services. So it's kind of how we do that. And look, for people that are, you know, truly anarchistic, if you want to use decentralized exchanges, that's great. There will always be an audience for that. But equally, there will be an audience for people that say, actually, you know what, I want, you know, to understand where that exchange is based. I want to know who runs that business. You know, I want to know what regulation they're under. And I think those are two very different audiences. And I would make the educated guess that the audience for regulated exchanges in reputable locations is a bigger audience than the audience that wants decentralized and will keep it on a ledger under their bed. I just think they're slightly different audiences.
I see what you mean with having more regulation or having clearer regulation, not necessarily more, right? Like clarity over, because one of the biggest things that is holding the crypto industry back right now is lack of clarity.
Correct.
But when you listen to, like, I listened to the whole 5-hour crypto hearing, you know, and when you listen to things like that, I just think that the biggest problem, and this is the problem that I discussed in my documentary, The Millennial Disruption, that I created in 2017 and released 2018. And the biggest issue is the difference in the language that we understand as digital natives. And I don't even, you know, millennials, you know, I don't necessarily say that we are 100% a digital native, because especially as an older millennial, you know, we came to this. So we started using technology when we were teenagers, whereas, you know, the next generation, they grew up with it. Like, you know, they had iPads in their hands, you know, by the time they were like 2 years old, right?
In utero. So,
yeah. So I always say, and this is what I talked about in my documentary, that digital is a language. You know, digital is a language. You are either a digital native or you're not. If the majority of your regulators are baby boomers, you know, essentially, right? Like, it's very hard to expect them to understand what this is all about and how, you know, so that is one of the hardest things, you know, like, do you feel that our regulators qualify to regulate an industry that
Well, look, there's a couple of things. I think you and I are quite interesting. We're roughly the same age, so we are on the cusp of millennial. I'll often say that I don't really identify as a millennial. My career has not taken a traditional millennial route. You know, I can afford to buy property. You know, I've enjoyed some growth in house prices in the UK that, you know, the younger millennials, you know, haven't been lucky enough to enjoy. So it probably comes down to the likes of you and I to try and bridge that gap. So if, like me, you have sat in meetings with the FCA talking about crypto, there ain't sure a lot of middle-aged white dudes there, right? There's not a massive variety of experience in the room. And I'm not sure if the crypto industry is talking to regulators, if you're comparing like with like. There's a list of things about the old world that just don't translate to the new world, and vice versa. So I think we're kind of feeling our way a little bit to come to, you know, some mutual understanding. So the obvious one is KYC and AML, right? So clearly crypto has the capacity to be abused, right? So it makes perfect sense to me that some of the standards for KYC and AML have to be applied to crypto, but equally we've got a whole bunch of technologies which better what's already there. So for example, we've mentioned chain analysis, for example. So I think that it is a struggle. You are breaching a chasm to have that conversation, but they need to do it. So in the UK, as I mentioned a couple of years ago, they said, right, make yourself known if you want to be a crypto business in the UK. And my understanding is that they had multiples more in terms of applications than they were expecting. This is all on record, stuff you can find easily. So they were awash with applications that they didn't have the manpower to service, hence this temporary permissions. And now a number of exchanges are migrating from the temporary permissions to full permissions. So the fact that the department was so overwhelmed they couldn't deal with the incoming workload, and I would make a guess, is it workload, is it expertise, or is it a combination of the two? And I'd make a really good guess it's the latter. So I think, trying to educate regulators on what crypto does and what it can offer, I think has been an uphill struggle. There's quite a few trade bodies now that are kind of banging that drum. Parliament taking a view on what crypto offers, I think, is a really good step, because Parliament and the regulator are two different organizations. So I think they're coming at it from slightly different angles. But look, I think that it's an ongoing conversation. Probably do agree with Cesar when he says, regulation is a journey. It's not an endpoint. It's an ongoing situation. But I think if we don't get some experts in crypto into our regulatory bodies, that's going to be a serious challenge moving forwards.
Well, I take my hats off to you, because if I was in that room, I would get too angry.
Luckily it was a Zoom. It was Zoom.
I saw YouTube videos. Like it's quite hard to be able to communicate to people who have absolutely no
no idea,
interest and understanding, right?
And look, it's a barrier to innovation. That lack of regulatory clarity is a barrier to innovation. And for the UK to say, look, we're a hotspot of fintech, well, that is not true for crypto. So for businesses like myself, and this is not a story I'm sure you're hearing from just me, the FCA is not a pleasant body to deal with. We have one of the only regulatory bodies in the world where you can't phone up and say, look, we're thinking about doing X. What do you reckon? The law around this is not quite clear. Can you let me know? So we're the only regulatory body in the world that says, well, we'll just let people try that and then we'll let them know what they think afterwards. Well, look, begging for forgiveness rather than asking for permission is not a pleasant way to live your life, is it? So I think, we do need to have both clearer regulatory frameworks, but I think they also need to be more accessible. And it's a huge, huge barrier to innovation generally, not to have that. And if the UK misses out on the crypto piece of the pie, that's going to be massively to the detriment of our great country.
Yeah, especially after Brexit, we've already had that lovely surprise. So tell me about your experience as you're dealing with regulators. Do you feel that maybe women are more open, less open? That's quite interesting to me to understand.
Yeah, sure. I'm not sure I have a big enough data set to make any
which is very sad in itself, right?
So I can only think of one lady that I've dealt with from a regulatory capacity. I can't think of a single regulatory lawyer that I've dealt with. So yeah, like with anything in financial services, is like 98% male, which I'm sure is part of the problem.
And how did they react to you being a lady?
So I don't think the regulatory conversations I've had I've ever been made to feel uncomfortable. I'm pleased to report, but you do stick out a bit. And look, it is a weird position in previous roles, like I say, to have worked in a building with 300 people and there's 2 girls. I mean, that is quite a bizarre situation, really, when we're 50% of the population. I've talked quite a lot about why I think that the sort of move to a lot more sort of remote working is good for women. So look, I think we've moved away. The beginning of my career was very much a culture of presenteeism. It was almost like proving that you'd suffered to like earn your stripes, basically. And that kind of gets passed down intergenerationally, doesn't it? So managers go, well, I really suffered when I was in my early 20s, so we're going to heap work on you. And you look at all these interns that are literally committing suicide from mental health issues, from having too much workload. Look at all the burnout. I think those days are over now. And I think we've moved to a much friendlier model of working. So I say to all of my team members, the person that is an expert on getting the best out of you is you. So you tell me if you are mad for your sport and you always go for a swim at 6 a.m. so you want to start work at 9, great. If you're someone that, like me, gets caught at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day, because we're HQ in New Zealand, I need a 2-hour lunch break because I have calls between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. and I always have calls between like 8 p.m. and midnight. So I need the middle of the day to do really exciting things like the food shop, or to spend time with my partner, or to see my kids, or frankly, you should have sports and interests and hobbies, and whether that is your kids, or you're really fond of your guinea pig, or you're really into knitting, I don't care. You should be able to carve out time to chase those interests. So I think particularly as an industry, I think the method of working has always been, if you're a digital business, you're more likely to work from home. If you're a digital business, you're more likely to have some flexibility. And I think that becoming more entrenched in society generally is the best thing that's happened to women for a generation. And I honestly would compare it to getting the pill, or I would honestly compare it to getting the vote. And when someone says to me, what's the best thing about working from home full time? So we're actually HQ New Zealand. We do have a physical office, but we all work remotely, and we meet once a month, just kind of for sort of team culture reasons. And that works amazingly well for me. So for me personally, I've just had a baby. I had 4 weeks off to have a baby in the late summer. The whole of our team is actually training for an ultra marathon this year. So that's obviously, I've literally had a baby a few months ago, so I'm just starting that. I've got horses that I compete. I've got 2 kids. So the fact that I can be flexible to get that done is fantastic. The single best thing about working from home is, if like me, you have a baby, you have to do about 3 loads of washing a day. The fact I can get washing in between meetings is like the single best bit of my career right now. And for me to say that flippantly is a joke, right? But to say that working from home is the best thing that's happened for a generation is quite serious. And I expect to see a lot more senior women in really high level posts because we allow them to do that. And look, I could write you a list of 50 women I know that are seriously competent and are probably more competent than the men that have filled the posts they have left because they couldn't have flexible working. And I'm sure you could write a similar list, or any woman listening to this will say, yeah, no, I've got stacks of female friends or stacks of women that I've come across in my career. So that level of flexibility, I think, is going to be absolutely a fundamental change for the better that I expect to see out in the next 5 to 10 years playing out. I think it's a big change for us.
That's really, really interesting you say that, because I've also heard some completely different perspective from women who have said that because now they're homeschooling and, you know, because of the fact that they're working from home, so people think that, okay, or like the family members or the children, that they like, okay, you're home, so you need to give time to me, right? So I think maybe for people who have slightly older kids, it's in some cases, especially the homeschooling thing, has been a very big issue.
Yeah,
but I think all of that will sort itself out, because in the beginning,
yeah, sure,
we didn't know what to do with this homeschooling thing. Right now,
yeah, sure. So I actually did have to homeschool. So I had a baby over the summer, but I also have a son who is now 8. So I know it varied all over the country and for different schools. I actually had a full academic year of homeschooling.
Wow.
So I had female friends that said, my goodness, I've got 3 kids. They're all being homeschooled. So I had female friends that literally were saying, so myself and my husband, we tag team the kids. I get up early and do my work from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then we swap. So basically these poor women were having literally a full work day followed by a full school day. And look, it was hard work. I'm very lucky. I have a very well-behaved 8-year-old. So I think he was 6 and 7 when we were homeschooling. He's at a school which is a Microsoft showcase school. So kind of the technology was really good. Yeah. But actually it was quite cool. So he'd be working on the kitchen table. So look, 3 years ago, if my kid walked in the middle of this podcast, you'd be absolutely mortified. You know, I broadcast on BBC World News. If my kid walked in, you would literally just die. We had like literally memes around this poor guy that had his kid walk in. But it got to the stage over the homeschooling. We were like, look, I'm really sorry. We have this call every Monday at 11 about this project we're working on. My kid will be walking in because the printer's in here and he's had his maths thing broadcast. So yeah, no worries. And actually, you know what people's living rooms look like. I know that you've got cats. I've seen one of your lovely black cats across the background now, you know, and it's a way of building rapport. And actually, my kid now knows how hard I have to work for my career. So he'll say things like, oh, mum was on BBC World News. 300 million people, you know, watch BBC World News. So actually, a little bit of interaction with, I don't just leave the house at 7:30 and come back at 7 o'clock at night. Actually, this is what I'm doing. And, you know, he'll, when I do the school run, I open up the app and see what crypto is doing. And he knows that a day full of green is good news and a bit of red is less good news. And, you know, he's asking me if he can put his pocket money into Bitcoin. So, yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for, you know, the sort of slightly older kids. Yes, it was a really traumatic time. Yeah, of course, women generally took more of that burden on, of course. But I think actually the fact that perhaps some of those older kids have seen their mothers working and, you know, balancing all those spinning plates, I'm not sure is a bad thing. It'd be interesting to see if those kids, once they're older, have more balanced workloads in their relationships. That would be an interesting question for sociologists to ask in, you know, 10 and 15 years time, I think.
That's very interesting. Although if there is any work left in 10 or 15 years, because yes. You know, because the robots could be doing everything, and you know, we could be, who knows what will happen to the society. What's your views on the metaverse? What are your thoughts on that? Have you been looking into that, you know, in terms of both investment and in terms of just like where the trend is going?
I think the direction of travel for the metaverse makes sense to me. You know, I think Facebook rebranding its parent company is the single best bit of PR for the metaverse as an industry that you could possibly ask for. So I think the metaverse is finding its feet. You know, anyone that's got teenage kids who's been, you know, held at ransom to buy various skins for games will tell you the metaverse has been a thing for a while. I think seeing it more broadly infiltrating society, I think is an interesting trend that we'll see. I was asked for some press comment a few weeks ago about whether there are any specific metaverse tokens that I've got my eye on. My answer remains the same. I'm focused on blue chip crypto because there's plenty of application across blue chip coins in the metaverse. And look, it's finding its feet. You know, the metaverse is disparate projects right now. There's nothing really, it's quite difficult to get a sense of what that ecosystem looks like. You know, it's disparate projects. You know, it's a concept and a trend that people have highlighted. I'm not sure we've really got a sense of how big that is. You know, it makes sense to me that, you know, governments might say, look, we don't have a town hall now, we have it in the metaverse. Or, we have a massive organization with 100,000 employees, we don't have an annual conference now, we just do it in the metaverse. Like, those things make sense. How that's monetized and how big an industry that will be, I think, remains to be seen. I think it's a trend that's coming in. I don't think it's going to replace every physical meeting. At some point it's nice to actually look in the whites of someone's eyes, but I think that industry is kind of carving its way out. And I think it's a great example of how crypto can be the pipes that builds that industry. Makes sense to me.
Super interesting. I mean, this has shaped up to be one of my really favorite conversations. It's really, really interesting. Do you have any daughters, or do you only have
two boys? Yeah, I know. I did request last time a daughter, so I could. But I was so convinced I was pregnant with a girl that I was literally, my life ambition is to have like a doll's house, like a Victorian doll's house. And I was so convinced I was pregnant with a girl because I was so portly that I was literally like looking at antique shops and stuff. No, I got a boy that doesn't sleep. So yeah, 2 boys, unfortunately. They're great. But
that's so sweet. That's sweet.
But whenever I have like female friend has a baby girl, I'm like straight there with all the pink stuff, I'm buying all the dresses and any excuse to go and buy girly stuff for my female friends' daughters. It's something that I don't get to indulge on my own, unfortunately.
That's really cool though, because we used to get some feedback from certain people saying that, oh, your website has got a lot of pink, and I'm like, so what? It doesn't mean that like I like pink, like just because we are a female driven platform that talks about technology doesn't mean that we have to.
Sure. And look, we're the same. I'm probably I like a bit of pink in my life. I also like getting covered in mud when I'm out running or out horse riding and what have you. So I think there's a lot of variety of experience. And actually, interesting enough, one of the things we try and do with Women Who Crypto is to have a huge variety of female experience. And actually, interesting, we've always said, men are welcome, we're not throwing you out. And actually we do they're always a bit sheepish, like they always come in at the end and they've always got their camera off, and it's like if it's someone called, I know, Clive, you can work out that's probably a dude, right? No, welcome, come on in, so it's interesting. I think some of the sort of female dialogue can be quite hostile and quite anti-male, which I just don't think is helpful.
No,
I think if you're actually after equality, you need to make sure that you're presenting that equal playing field. And I think it wants to not be at the expense of our male colleagues and other platform users. Something I feel quite strongly about.
Super interesting. So do you have, as a final word, do you have any thoughts, anything you want to say to the women who listen to this podcast? And is there anything that you want to leave them with in terms of how
sure.
about their investments, how they, about this industry and all that stuff?
I think women are the most phenomenal community builders. That's one of the things that we set out to do at Women Who Crypto, something that you're doing an amazing job of at FemPeak. And look, there are all these networks and communities that you can tap into. They're generally very accessible. You should be able to, we're in a world now where there is social media, there is LinkedIn, there is Facebook, you can get access to these people. So, make sure you're part of a community and a tribe that you're comfortable with. So I think that's the first thing, find, a community or communities that you want to be part of. Crypto is increasingly welcoming to women in a way that it just wasn't, I'm sure you'll agree, even maybe a year ago, certainly, 2-3 years ago. So look, spread the word. I think crypto only exists if we can get enough critical mass for the industry. And look, for you and me that have been watching crypto for 2, 3, 4 years, you couldn't ask for more. If someone had said to me 18 months ago, you'll be getting, we literally get daily inquiries for press comment from mainstream British press outlets, right? And if someone said to me that 2-3 years ago, I would have said, get out of town, you need to have a lie down. So that crypto message needs to get out there. That community needs to grow. So if you are female and you are listening to this or watching this, spread that message, because you will have female friends that need to hear that, and crypto as an industry needs to have that message getting out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. That was really, really helpful, and I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
I hope you enjoyed today's interview with Katharine Wooller. This is a topic that I've been getting increasingly interested in, and I've also started a daily YouTube series to explain a lot of the core concepts in these areas. So be sure to check it out and subscribe to the channel. Also, find the Somi Arian podcast on Apple, Spotify, or any other one of your favorite podcast channels. And don't forget to give it a 5-star rating and write a review. Finally, if you're not yet a member of FemPeak, head over to fempeak.ai, register, and join to stay in the know and ahead of the curve.